going to talk about Roy Keane, who announced last week that he was leaving Notts Forest and his job as assistant manager to Martin O'Neill. He'd been there only 5 months, but he felt it was announced that it was time to try his hand at management again. Roy Keane is 47. He's had, as a player, an illustrious career. I think one of the great players in the Premier League era, or indeed, if you go further back, there's no doubt about his quality as a player. His record as a coach and a manager is a different kettle of fish. And I'm joined now by John Giles to talk about Roy Keane. John, we both, I think, have been fascinated by Keane and admired him. Let me just talk to you first about how good he was as a player. And you yourself were a great player. My opinion of him is that he's up there with the best I've seen. And you've played with the greats, Billy Bremner, Bobby Charlton, great players. Where does he stand in your view as a player?
Well, I think he was one of the great players, Eamon. And great players have different elements to the game that make them great. You mentioned Bobby Charlton. Like, Bobby Charlton was a wonderful player, 2-footed, quick, could score goals from 40 yards. Other great players would be different in different attributes. And Keane had definitely different attributes to Bobby Charlton. I mean, when you look at all the great players, I mean, Messi is different to Ronaldo, but they're all great in their own way. Keane was great in his own way because of mainly his attitude. Like, his attitude was that, when I look now, I don't know him, as you know.
Yes, I do, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, but looking at him just purely as a player, I think his biggest attribute was a willingness to never be satisfied with what he did.
Yes.
Right. What I found with all the great players, they're never satisfied with what they did. They always have to be better.
Yeah.
Right. And Bobby Charlton would have had that in his own way. But then you come into the different personalities. Keane definitely had it in a different way, which was aggressive.
Yes.
You know, like, I think, I'm only giving you my take on him, okay? I think with his players, with Beckham and Neville and Giggs and all these terrific players of his time.
Scholes in that team, Schmeichel, Steve Bruce.
Yeah.
Like, there were very strong characters in that Manchester United team that he actually led.
Yeah. Well, he was stronger than any of them.
Yes.
Or he was, I could say, crankier than any of them.
Yeah.
I think there's a crankiness in him, Eamon, that helped to make him a great player.
Yes.
Because I said before, all the great players I knew were never satisfied with what they did. Right after the match, it was, what did I do wrong?
Yes.
Not what did I do right? Yes. I mean, that's the big difference. You see young lads coming into the end of a couple of good games and their head goes.
Yeah.
Because they think, oh, I have it made, or whatever it might be. The great players think, no, never satisfied, has to be better. I think Keane had that in spades.
Yeah, the other thing that I think he had as a player was just purely on the playing side. He had a sense of where the game was at any given time. I thought he was good at, first of all, keeping other players alert and focused and concentrated.
Yeah,
Second,
that was his crankiness. You see,
that was his.
First of all, he demanded that of himself.
Yes,
and then he demanded that of the people around him in his own particular way.
Yes,
unusual way, which was to bully them in many ways.
But I also think he understood, John, a game, what was going on in any given game. I'll give you a good example. They played Liverpool in the cup final. In the end, it was a good Liverpool. It was a great match. Cantona scored the winner not long before the end. It was a really good goal. But Keane in that game fought. He was deep. He stayed deep. He understood what was happening. He actually also understood, I always thought, the tempo of a game, what was required. They call it game management now as a kind of, but if the tempo needed to be upped, he was the one driving that too. If it needed to be, slowed, he understood that. I thought that was a football intelligence or an understanding of where they were at any given moment in the 90 minutes and what they needed to do.
Yeah. I wouldn't go that far with him, Eamon. Yeah. As a tactician, I think what he was watching him playing, Keane was at his best when United were up against it.
Yes.
That's when he was at his best. I think if they were winning 3-0, or like most players, you could take him off the pitch, right?
Yeah.
So in the Liverpool match, if you go back on that, it was a no-score game for a long, long time.
It was, yeah.
And they had to battle.
They sure did.
Now, they had to battle to win it. And did he battle?
To save, going behind?
Behind all the time, Eamon. I don't think he was a great tactician in the way, say, we talk about Modric, who's a modern player who gets on it here, gets on it there, gets it on it there. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think he had that.
Yeah. Which was something you had, a sense of where the game was at.
Yeah. Well, at any particular time.
Yeah.
I don't think he had that.
Right.
But he had this aggression, will, never be satisfied with himself and never be satisfied with anybody around him. That's what drove him on. I mean, if you go back a couple of months ago when he was discussing Pogba on the television.
Yes.
That conversation was made for Keane.
Yeah, I should actually reference that. It was the Manchester Derby game at the end of the Premier League where everyone was hoping, everyone who's a Liverpool fan, that Manchester United could do City.
Yeah.
But he was in the studio with Graham Souness, who he clearly respected, and Gary Neville came in later, who he clearly didn't respect all that much.
He totally disagreed with Neville because what they were saying was it Fred that was playing? There was somebody anyway in the match for one of the goals.
Fred
didn't get back.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And now that would drive Keane on the pitch and off the pitch round the bend.
Yes.
Why didn't you get back? That's why, like if it was Beckham or anything, he'd make these guys do that and they wouldn't do it again.
Yeah.
This guy did it. So this is something he couldn't understand. Graham to a lesser extent, because he was a great pro as well. Not quite Keane in terms of that particular situation. Yeah. But that was Keane saying, look what happened. Silly Neville at the time was saying, well, the way City played, they get tired. And Keane responded quite right. It's only 53 minutes gone.
Yes.
Right? Why wasn't he making the effort to get back?
Yes.
Right? Like the conversation was made from in that particular way. Like he made Neville look a fool in many ways because Neville was trying to justify them giving the goal away. And he was bang on in terms, why didn't he get back? I think Keane could imagine himself on the pitch, Eamon, in that particular situation. He would have got a block on the ball.
Yes.
Or he would have made a blooming good effort in. And anybody else that was playing with him would do the same. Because he wouldn't stand for anything else.
Yes.
That was his big, I think that was his big asset. I think as the game went on in terms of getting on the ball to slow it down, wasn't his game.
Okay.
Okay. That's the way I see him.
Yeah, well, I take you to another game that I'm sure you will remember. United playing Juventus away from home in the Champions League, the year they won it. It was the Champions League semi-final. And Keane got booked.
Yeah.
And he was going to miss the final. In fact, Paul Scholes got booked, and they both missed the final in '99, which is actually extraordinary when you think about it. But they'd gone 1-0 down to Juventus, who I think got a draw at Old Trafford, and they were dead. It looked bad, and at that stage in the first half, he kind of upped his game. This is how I remember it. He upped his game. He was everywhere. Making tackles, good passes. Like he wasn't a spectacular visionary passer.
No.
But he was a good passer. Yeah. And he scored. He scored from a header. A header. Roy Keane, you wouldn't expect. But he made the effort, got to the near post, got United back in the game. And then actually they went on to win the game. But his 90-minute performance that night, I thought, was stunning. And even though one of the things that made it even more stunning was he knew he was going to miss the final.
But that would be him, Eamon. Yeah. You know, I'm not taking that. He was great. But see, when he's up against it, himself personally and team-wise particularly, then you really do see the best of him.
Yes.
Because, again, he wouldn't be... See, when he was doing what he was doing on the pitch and driving the others and getting back and on about Fred not getting back, he did that.
Yeah.
Totally unselfish. That was one of the reasons that... When most great players are unselfish, some of them are not so unselfish, but he was totally unselfish in what he was doing. He didn't care whether he was playing in the next match or not. No. He was playing on that particular match where they were really up against it. That's what I keep saying, and I mean this in a complimentary way, because we could talk about the Sunshine Boys. I mean, the boys who, when you're winning 3-0 with 10 minutes, give me the ball. You know, they're the same guys who are playing at home and they're expected to win and they're 2-0 down and you can't find them. Keane was the total opposite to the Sunshine Boys.
Yes,
he was at his best when the Sunshine Boys would be at home.
Yeah.
And it was the same in the Juventus matches. That was a match of got to keep going, and it showed his unselfishness as a pro, that he didn't think of himself. Well, I'm not going to be playing in the next match anyway. No, he wouldn't even think about that. This is what had to be done in the match.
Yes, and I think he kind of. I mean, I think it wasn't just effort; it was intelligently applied effort. Yeah, in other words, he knew where to be. He knew when to tackle.
Yeah, well,
he knew when to do something.
But you take that for granted in a great player. I mean, if he couldn't do that, he wasn't going to be a great player. You'd get a fella running over here when they should be running over. He knew exactly what to do, but particularly when they were behind and up against it. You see, once they get on top, then you got Giggs coming into the game and Beckham coming into the game and all the Scholes coming into the game. Yeah. Like he wasn't... He didn't have to be at his best because everything was going okay. But as soon as he saw them getting a little bit cocky or that, then he'd be onto them like a shot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Now, that was his... I think it was that crankiness that was in him drove him onto that greatness, because, again, great players are not satisfied with themselves. Now, what he didn't have, in my opinion, with the players was a bit of affection. Do you know what I mean? No. Like years later, he said, "Have you got back?" I haven't got back. I haven't got any of the numbers.
No.
So I don't think there was something in him that didn't actually let him enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like he thrived on the crankiness.
Yes. I mean, that's why I think for Ferguson got him out of scrapes.
Yeah.
When he was, when he used to drink, he could be sort of aggressive and get into trouble. And I think on one occasion in Manchester, the players were all out for a night out. He ended up in a cell.
Yeah,
and Ferguson got up, came into the centre of Manchester, and got him out of the cell. Took him home. But I mean, you've not just played at the highest level; you've coached and managed at the highest level. For a manager, I mean, Ferguson loved him. And the thing about Keane and great players like him, for a coach, they're just priceless, because you're sitting there, especially someone like Ferguson, you're raging, you're frantic, and you can see what's required. And here's the guy who's on the pitch, as it were.
Yeah.
He's doing what he knows exactly what's required, and he's doing it.
Yeah, he's one of the great players, one of the great leaders for him, which was, like if you'd asked me when I was younger, Eamon, I would have said no, I would have had him out.
Yeah.
Right? But what Ferguson did with him, which was to live with him, go with him, to get the return that he got, ultimately was great management.
Yes.
Right.
And when Keane went over the line, when he criticised players on MUTV, actually, he was out the door. And at that stage, he was injured. He was carrying injuries.
Well, that was a different story, I think, Eamon. Like I didn't admire Ferguson's behaviour to Keane at that particular time. I think he used that particular incident to get rid of him.
Yes, when he was crocked.
Yeah,
he was injured.
But he wasn't doing his stuff on the pitch.
No.
right, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So Ferguson then, I think what should have happened was Ferguson should have gone to him and said, look, Roy, it's over.
Yeah.
Now, I think Roy Keane would have gone mad with that. But I think that would have been the way to do it, because all the great players that I've known can't take it when the manager says, myself included, you're on your way.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that Keane deserved the, look, Roy, it's over. It's not using, because what Keane said afterwards was, I've done that for years on MUTV.
Yes.
Well, I haven't done anything different, which he probably didn't.
Yeah.
But this was an occasion where he wasn't a great Roy Keane anymore.
Right.
He was crocked and he was on his way out. And I think it should have been handled in a way, look, Roy, it's over.
Yeah, just now to go to the Ireland situation. Again, 2002 World Cup, Saipan and him walking out or being kicked out, depending on your view of it or your perspective. He, in that qualifying phase to get us there, was magnificent for Ireland in a team that was very good. I mean, had people like Eamon Dunphy, Roy Keane, really good players, and Richard Dunn was coming into that squad. He wasn't actually there, Richard, at the time, but he was a great leader for Ireland as well in that campaign. Now, I remember vividly, I wonder, I'm sure you do remember, the last game was, the big game was Holland at Lansdowne Road, the old Lansdowne Road, and we had to win, which thanks to a Jason McAteer goal we did. In the first minute of that match, Mark Overmars was playing for Holland, and Keane crunched into a tackle. It was a very vivid memory. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
And this was Keane, again, sensing we need to deliver a message to these boys, because Holland were a very, very good team. Yeah. Louis van Gaal was the coach. They ended up with 5 centre forwards on the pitch. But Van Nistelrooy and people like that playing for them.
Oh, yeah.
In that moment, again, he was leading.
Yeah. Yeah, he was leading in every moment on the pitch. This is what made Keane a great player, in that what he expected of himself was incredible. What he expected of himself. And expecting it of himself, he expected it of others.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's why when he was up against it, I've often said, like, I never played with Roy Keane. I'd love to have played with him. But if I needed somebody in the trenches with me, I'd have Roy Keane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. He wouldn't be a sunshine boy. He'd be the total opposite to that. So he was a warrior in that way, in his own peculiar way, in many ways.
Yes.
Because when they were at their toughest, he was at his best.
Yes.
Like, there's no doubt about that. And like, there's not many players I could say that about.
No.
I mean,
and in that discussion they were having with Gary Neville and Graham Souness, I think Paul Scholes might have been there as well, after the City United derby at the end of last season.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was Neville.
I don't remember Scholes being there.
No, Scholes wasn't there, actually. No. Joe Hart was there, but he might have not been there.
To that,
but I think it was Gary Neville who said, like, Roy was the greatest captain we've ever had. And Neville himself, of course, is a strong character and went on to captain Manchester United. But
he wouldn't be in the same class as... I'm not suggesting that you're saying that, but I mean, it was...
to command the respect of people like Scholes, Schmeichel, Neville, Giggs, Beckham, and people like that, nobody knows you better than the guys you share a dressing room with. And they respected him.
Of course, I mean, he led them. He wouldn't stand any. He demanded it of himself first. This is what happens with the great players. If the great players don't demand it of themselves, then they've no case to demand it of other people.
Yes.
Right? So when Keane is playing that and he's working this and he's doing this and he's doing that, and Beckham is not getting back, what are you doing?
Yes.
Beckham can't say, well, you're not doing it.
Yes.
Do it.
Yes.
Don't give a shit what you do it. Just get back, do what you have to do. And he's like that all the time because he's doing it himself.
And the other thing, and this is where I think his football intelligence was important, he knew what they should have been doing, all of them. Whether they were defenders, whether they were attackers.
Well, it was mostly effort, Eamon. Like when you look at his discussion after I keep going back to that particular match, it was effort. It was the lad, Fred, I think it was Fred, not making the effort.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I never saw him getting on to somebody really for making a mistake.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. It'd be, did you do your best? Did you get up behind the ball? Did you get back? No, you didn't get back.
Just to go to the crankiness of him, when I was writing his book, I wouldn't have ghosted anyone else's book. I didn't like ghosted biographies or autobiographies. And he asked me, and I said, okay, it's him. Because it's him, I'll do it. Now, he was captain of Manchester United at the time. It was a difficult assignment. He wasn't going to tell me intimate secrets of what was going on in the dressing room or anything like that. But I was in his house. I used to do it on Sunday morning, fly over to Manchester, do the recordings, and there we had get the stuff. And I just mentioned the Juventus game to him. And this maybe goes to your point about crankiness. I said, Jesus, that was awesome, Roy. You know, he said, I didn't play well, he said. And he insisted. He said, I've looked back at the tape. He said, I didn't. Yeah. I didn't play well. And I said, for fuck's sake, Roy, you did it on your own. It was amazing.
But that's the standards, Eamon. That's the standards.
But even by any standards, he was magnificent that night.
Of course.
I mean, they had Saipan, I think.
But there must have been something in the game that he saw that wasn't that great, or what would be in his head as well. The things that he did great, he'd say to you, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway,
what's the big deal? You know, there's no big deal in it. That's why he could demand of the others.
Yeah, like, he wasn't having it anyway.
At all. No. Well,
but
that's what he'd feel. I mean, if he again, it'd be worse. You see, why the guys who don't make it is the guy that would be saying to you, "I did play great."
Yeah.
Wasn't I great? Wasn't I great?
Yeah.
Like the great players, they're never great, Eamon, in their own head. Never.
Yeah. No, there's more to be done.
Never perfection. You're looking for perfection.
Yeah.
You don't get it.
No.
Now, and I'm not comparing myself to Keane or any of these
you were
lads.
very similar in that particular
But I never played a game, Eamon, ever, that I could say, I'm really satisfied with that.
Yeah,
ever.
I did.
Ever.
No.
And I'm not sorry, I don't mean to bring myself into it, but I know the mentality.
Yeah.
And Keane had it. Keane had it, obviously, in a big way, in a different way to Bobby Charlton, or indeed the way I played. It was more physical. It was more tackling. Obviously, a great awareness. But he wouldn't be gifted like Bobby Charlton to be knocking balls over the place and scoring goals like that. But he was in the middle of the field and he was getting other people at it, and they couldn't deny him.
No, one of the things he said to me about that, he's saying not doing the things Bobby Charlton. He said, "Eamon, I'm not a great player." He said, "You look at the great players." And he started talking about Messi and Pele and Bobby Charlton and, you know, gifted. Like,
gifted is,
Yeah, no, he said, I don't have any of that. And effectively what he was saying was...
But he had things that Bobby Charlton didn't have.
That was the point. But of course, what you have, you tend to maybe take for granted a little bit more.
They all do. Like Bobby Charlton, for example, I knew Bobby reasonably well. Bobby Charlton idolised Jimmy Schooler.
Yes. Who was Newcastle.
Hard nut.
Yeah,
hard nut. Bobby loved the hard nuts.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't be, Bobby couldn't be a hard nut. But he admired, because what he had, he'd take for granted, right?
Yes.
Like what Roy Keane would have, he would take for granted. I'm not a Bobby Charlton. I can't do what Bobby Charlton did. But Bobby Charlton couldn't do what he do. And Bobby Charlton would have loved to be able to do what Roy Keane did.
The end of his career for Ireland, the Saipan incident, don't really want to revisit it. It's not particularly germane to what we're talking about, but we don't agree about what happened. I thought that, I do admire Mick McCarthy, and for now more than ever because of what he's endured in football, and he's, remained a good coach, and he's had, he's done good jobs at Wolves, Ipswich, and places like that. But I thought it was a failure of management that Keane, that the Keane situation wasn't managed. He gave an interview to the Irish Times to Tom Humphreys, in which he expressed reservations about the training facilities and the preparation for the World Cup. and it wasn't actually shock horror interview. It was critical of the FAI and critical of McCarthy. And McCarthy saw the article and went mad, and
I think
lost the plot.
I don't like to revisit it. I think there were mistakes made on both sides.
Yeah.
In the lead. I think if Mick McCarthy had his time all over again, he's older and wiser now,
yes,
he would have handled differently. I think Roy Keane would have handled differently. I did hear him say one time publicly that he regrets not staying.
I know he does.
For the match. You know what I mean? In other words, in Roy Keane's, okay, he had reasons to do what he did. Mick had reasons to do what he did, and they were wrong. I think Roy Keane at the time, I felt anyway, even now, to say, okay, I don't agree with any of this, but I'm going to play in the World Cup. And Mick McCarthy should have said, okay, it's Roy. Yeah. I don't agree with what he's saying or what he's doing in that, but let's get. I think it was just a lack of give and take on both sides at that particular time. I think if both of them had their time all over again, now starting from that, Roy Keane would have played in the World Cup and they wouldn't have fallen out the way that they did.
We might have done pretty well because we only went out.
Well, we went out on penalties in the end. Yeah. It was a shame in the long run, you know.
It was.
But you know, these things happen, as we know. I mean, now, they happen.
He went off to Niall Quinn was at Sunderland. They were relegated. He got Keane to come and coach the team. Now, I remember us talking about that at the time, and we were both excited, curious, and intrigued by how Keane would do as a manager, as a coach, because of his, leadership qualities and so on. And actually, the first year they got promotion, which was amazing, and it was interesting. And both of us loved the game. It's exciting when you see someone new come into the game and have that kind of success, say like Frank Lampard had with Derby last year, got them to playoff finals. Now, then it all went pear-shaped. And I heard stories from people who'd been there, Irish players who'd played for him there, and the stories got out about how difficult he was, how brooding. He'd stand there with his arms folded on the touchline during training. He wasn't good at managing people. And then publicly he'd occasionally, saying players don't want to come to Sunderland. The wives don't like it. They'd rather be in Manchester and London. At the same time, he and his family hadn't moved up. He was only gone up on a Tuesday, So there were things wrong there. So that really didn't work. Ipswich, where he subsequently went, was again falling out with John Walters, for example. Not the only player he fell out with at Ipswich. John was late for training. Now, John, we can see what a great pro he's been over his career, John Walters. Hard to fall out with a guy like that. But Keane didn't have the patience, apparently, for that either. And he left Ipswich again, didn't make any friends there. Went with Martin O'Neill, and again with the Irish team, there was a row with John Walters again and Harry Arter. There was rows with fans, asking for a book to be signed. There was stuff going on. And again, the stories you hear from Irish players who were in the camp was this brooding presence, always on the brink of exploding, that was intimidating. What about that, John? I mean, that someone like we had goodwill for him. Everyone had goodwill for him when he started out as a coach.
Well, I'd say first of all, he goes to Sunderland and does well, Eamon. And management is a very complicated situation because if you get the right man in the right place, and there is that thing in football, you get the right man in the right place to do what's needed to be done. Maybe when he went to Sunderland first and was successful in that season, he probably was doing himself, but getting something out of the players that other people wouldn't get. But management is a very complex game, as we all know, because it's personalities. You're dealing with personalities all the same. I think Roy is just the one personality. That it has to be done the way he wants to be done, with this fanaticism.
Yes.
In his training, in his approach
He's
to
not
people.
a pragmatist. He's not a flexible...
No. I think when he was dealing with Clough, he'd have a row with Clough.
Yeah.
And Clough would call him all Irish so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. That didn't bother him. Right?
Yeah.
So he'd probably think, well, if it doesn't bother me, why should it bother anybody else when I'm talking to them? Not realising everybody's is different.
Yeah.
Right? Because in management, you have to go with this and you have to go with that. You have to be stern. Like in Ferguson's case, the way he handled him.
Yes.
Right? Would Roy have handled Roy if he was playing for him?
No.
I don't think so. No. Do you know what I mean?
Well, if he's having to go to John Waters in 10 minutes late, he might, if he found him in a prison cell or a police cell.
You know what I mean? So it's management is a very complex situation. Playing is a complex situation in many ways because you're dealing with him on the pitch.
Yeah.
You're dealing with him as a player, fellow player.
Yeah.
Right? And I'd say a lot of the players didn't like Roy.
No.
Like Roy said after, I don't have the telephone. I mean, but they'd love him.
He told me when I was doing the book with him, because I brought this up, he'd put this into the public domain. And he said, in all the time I've been here, and that was 10 years at least at that stage, he said he loved Eric Cantona. He said, I loved him. He said he was great. And I think he was drinking when Eric was there, but he just loved Cantona's cheek and Cantona's sort of arrogance, which he said not really like that at all. He said he's a very funny guy. Yeah. He knows what he's doing. He's playing a game with everybody. Yeah. And Keane really adored him, you know. And but he said of all the guys who were there, the only one whose phone number I've got is Nicky Butt. And Nicky Butt's a bit of a character, kind of a bit fun, and Giggs actually. The two of them were the comedians, if you like, in the camp. And I said, have you ever been out? He said, the only time I went out with Nicky Butt and his wife and my wife once. He said, didn't enjoy it. Just really weird.
Yeah.
Because it's, as you know, you played for United. I mean, Manchester's small. Yeah. It's very social. The players tend to, you know, especially those group, they were very close. But he was a man apart.
Yeah. But you see, what made him as an individual, Eamon, like all players, made him as a player. Yeah, right? It was that crankiness within him. Like he couldn't socialise with Butt or any of the players for that matter. Yeah. I don't even socialise with Cantona. He might admire him on the pitch because of his demeanour and his cheek and whatever it was that appealed to him.
Yeah, the guys he loved to socialise with were Brian Robson.
Yeah.
And he'd go on drinking sessions.
Well, they were drinking.
But he was drinking at that stage. And he'd go.
But when you're drinking, you can drink with anybody. And I don't mean that in a bad way. But he didn't actually socialise with Brian Robson.
No, they were drinking.
I don't think he socialised with him. But drinking is a great social situation for people.
One of the things he told me, and this is what helped him. I mean, to Roy Keane's great credit, as someone who had a problem with drink, he stopped.
Yeah,
and the problem stopped. He said one of the shocking things for him, and this is where Cantona and Laurent Blanc, who he also admired and respected, who came to play for United, a great French captain of the French World Cup winning team, manager of France subsequently. He said in the old days with the Brian Robson gang, they get back to Manchester after a match, maybe get by 8:30, 9 o'clock, and in the cars, straight to the pub.
Yeah.
He said all of a sudden, Laurent Blanc comes, Cantona comes, and a couple of other foreign players. So we get back to Manchester, and they'd all get in their cars and they're going home.
Wouldn't drink at all.
No,
there wouldn't be a drink culture at all.
No, not at all. And they wouldn't have a drink on the coach, maybe, even a bottle of beer. Yeah. And he said that was a kind of culture shock, but he learned from that and was impressed by it, which was interesting, you know?
Yeah. I don't know him at all, but I find him a fascinating character. I think he's a very intelligent lad, but he has this social problem, Eamon, as you said, with the players. He like even going out and he couldn't stick it.
No.
Didn't like it, which is fair enough. But one thing he did do was love football.
Yes.
Love getting the best out of himself in this cranky way that he did, which was great. I've never seen a player like that before, with that attitude. I mean, I was lucky enough to play with Bremner and Norman Hunter in those days. And on the pitch to be certain types of characters, but off the pitch to be sociable. We'd have rows but we'd have a discussion.
Yeah.
Afterwards, do you know what I mean? Like you'd be on. You'd be like, I'd be on to Norman Hunter. I'd be on to. But after the match, but Roy said, I don't mix with those guys.
No. The other thing now, I mean, he had his spell with Ireland. It didn't work out brilliantly. He's been 5 months at Notts Forest. He wants to go into management again. I mean, you'd wish him well, of course. He deserves that. And I should say, again, I met his wife, a lovely woman, and 5 children. You know, he's a good family man. He's, you know, it's a happy home. And there are many good things about Roy Keane. The other thing is he was always very generous and thoughtful about his family, his father and mother, and his extended family in Cork. He sent money home, you know, when he was a young guy. And he's good in that way. He was good to me in terms of the book. At a point, he turned on me, but it was just, you know, that's what happens. There does appear to be another side to him.
Yeah.
That is kind of, at 47 now, he's declared that he wants to stay in management and go on his own. The other option, the clear and obvious option for him, is to do television analysis. And actually, when he has time, that night with Souness and Gary Neville, the Manchester Derby night there on Sky, just at the end, towards the end of the season, I thought he was very good. I mean, his observations are good.
Yeah,
cute.
I think what he was talking about was made for him, Eamon.
Yes,
that on that particular night. I'm not saying now he can't do. No. I've never seen him doing the analysis really or anything like that. What he can do,
but they don't have time. You see on ITV. He's on ITV with Martin O'Neill, or he's on ITV with Kerry Dixon.
I don't get the impression though he's an analysis man. He's more the. He didn't get back there, and he didn't.
Yeah,
that's right. And that discussion was made for him in terms of Neville being silly. Really.
But he's box office.
Oh well, like what he said actually on the night. Pogba had done an interview before that particular program.
Yes,
which is the biggest load of rubbish.
That's
going.
right.
Actually, they'd had a terrible defeat somewhere.
Yeah, before the match, there was an interview,
and
with
he was
Pogba.
The guy, like, as usual with the television people. Who did they pick for the interview? Pogba. The biggest culprit on the day for the defeat.
Yeah.
And he's giving them a lot of bullshit, really.
Was it at Everton? Was it Everton?
It was at Everton. They were beaten 4-0 at Everton.
Yeah.
And they had him to do the interview afterwards and say, we have to do this. And he was the biggest culprit. So Keane said when it came home, he said, I don't believe a word he said.
That's right.
Bang on. Because it's total bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's what he can sniff that out very well. And again, one of the things that made him a great player, there was no bullshit on the pitch.
No.
There'd be no bullshit off the pitch either.
Yeah.
Where somebody, if it was, say, Beckham saying, well, I couldn't get back there, he'd say, rubbish.
Yeah.
Get back.
Yeah.
You know, there's that thing. And in terms of the management, going into the management, there's always a place for somebody in management. Maybe Manchester United.
Yeah.
Maybe.
For Keane.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe that's what they need.
Yeah.
Where Keane can get in and say, what do you think you're doing? What do you think? They might need that. We don't know. But somewhere there'll be a club that needs a Roy Keane.
Right.
You know, we have Lampard now going to Chelsea.
Yes.
We don't know. He's an ex-player and there's a lot of going on.
I think he's crazy, incidentally, because Chelsea are winding down. Eden Hazard is gone. Yeah. It's just the wrong time to go to Chelsea, and timing is everything, isn't it?
It's everything. Yeah. It's everything when you go.
I have huge respect for Frank Lampard, and the job he did at Derby County was very, very good.
Very good. And he could be the right man.
But
it's the right man, the right place.
He's going to walk in and he's going to develop the young players at Chelsea.
It's where you go. You can be the right man at the right place. Remember Ron Saunders gone to Manchester City. Ron Saunders was a man that went on, and he didn't last 6 months in that. No. Then he goes to Villa and builds a team that goes on to win the European Cup. I mean, when I was going into management first at West Brom, I remember Don Revy saying to me, careful where you go to. It's very important where you go to.
Yes.
In other words, if you go to, as happened, West Brom was good to me. There was a team that hadn't been playing well, but they had good players.
Yeah.
You know, but he was saying, like, you can go to a club that you've got bad lads in, and no matter how good you are, it's not going to work. So in Roy Keane's place, I think that there will be a club that will need his type of management.
The only time I spoke to him about it, because I thought with some of the qualities we've talked about, the leadership qualities particularly, that he certainly had the strength of character to be a manager in order to take the pressures of it. And he said, you know what I'd really like? He said, I'd really like to be a director of football and let other people do the work on the pitch with the players. In other words, let other people do the work during the week, which I think is an essential part of being a head coach, and you have to do it yourself. But that's what was in his mind at that time, because I asked him if he was taking his badges, the coaching badges. He said, I am. He said, but I'm not really into the coaching side of it. What I'm more interested in is being the sort of figurehead. And I thought it was a curious kind of job for someone like him to want.
I thought it would be the last thing he would.
Yeah, but there you go. That's what that was just the briefest of conversations.
Yeah.
But now I think he's come. He's 47. He's come. I think we can agree in what we've discussed that he commands our respect for what he was as a footballer.
I love him. I love him as a player, Eamon. I've said before. Yeah. I would love to have played with him.
Yes,
I would love to have played with him.
Yeah, and he'd be in any list of greats of the game, whether it's the modern game or as far back as we go. Then it's a question of will. You say there's a club for every manager. I don't think he's got the. You have to have empathy, and you have to understand and you actually like people. I think to really do that job, you have to.
I'm not so sure about management.
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah. But you've done it, so you know.
Well, I like some, I didn't like some, but I think it's.
You think there's a possibility that he could be a successful coach?
Yeah,
you do.
It's at a certain place. Let's put it this way: I'd put my money on him at Manchester United before Solskjaer.
Okay, that's interesting, and I think. When I think about it, you might be right. But then there might be a lot of people in front of Solskjaer who, if I can see who he wants to buy, Eric Dyer, for example, was mentioned in dispatches recently, which would be a bad move.
But I know we'll get to Man U, but like when you look at the summer, like in Solskjaer's case, what's he done in the summer? All I can hear is them getting another director of football, another person coming in and doing that. It's all about the backroom staff. And he's not mentioned in it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he should be picking the backroom staff. He should be picking the players. He should be dominant now at the moment to get this thing right for next season. And there's still a lot of talk. Is Rio Ferdinand going to come in as director of coaching?
Yes.
Or the director of football or whatever. Yeah. There's all that stuff going on at Manchester United at the moment. You know what I mean? And Solskjaer hasn't been mentioned.
Right. So just to conclude our assessment of Roy Keane, a great player, one of the greatest players. In your view, maybe the man for Manchester United?
Well,
right now?
I honestly think if Roy Keane went into Manchester United now, I think he'd do a better job for what's needed there than Solskjaer.
Okay.
It might need that type of thing. And what I might say as well, Eamon, there's lots of great players out there, and there's very, very few great players have been great managers.
Yeah, Bobby Charlton, who we spoke about before in this podcast, was a notable example of that. He went to Preston, I think, and didn't
Bobby was never made for management. Never made for management.
No.
And if you think about it, over the years, if you look at all the star players over the years, in my time and before and that, very, very few.
Yes.
Very few.
Yeah.
Made it management.
I mean, even your colleague Billy Bremner at one stage went to manage.
Billy did okay at Doncaster, then he went to Leeds, but he didn't really do it.
No.
But if you go back over the great players like I'm going back a long time, Jackie Milburn, Paul Gascoigne, Lineker, if you think back on there's very few. I mean, we'll do it another day, I think.
Yes.
To say, get a list of great players. Tell us, you listeners, tell us, give us a list of great players.
Who went on to be great managers. Yeah, I think it's an entirely different skill set, frankly.
Totally. But that's what I'm saying. Playing has nothing to do with it in many ways. There's ordinary players have gone on to be...
I'll give you 3 examples. Alex Ferguson, journeyman. Arsene Wenger, very much a journeyman. Yeah. And Jose Mourinho, play it all.
Yeah.
So
it's a totally different game, Eamon.
Okay, John, I'd like to thank you for that.